podcast.
Was goalkeepers, and when you look back, you go back 40 years or so as a Hull City goalkeeper, and there haven't actually been that many since you. You do tend to have an element of longevity about you with one club as well, don't you?
Yeah.
It just happens to have occurred like that.
That's right.
You were born in Lenzie, which is a railway town between, now let's get this right, it's between Glasgow and Edinburgh, isn't it?
That's right.
So why did you never play professional football in Scotland?
Well, the reason I didn't play professionally was I got a good offer to come down to Arsenal. And I had a conversation with my father and my uncle, and they decided that I'd be best suited coming to England and following a career there, because I'd been invited to join either Rangers or Celtic, and that could have caused a bit of confusion in the family.
You were from a split family?
I was from a split family.
Right.
So I came down and I joined the Arsenal.
Because when we had Jock Davidson here, his story was, well, my brother was a long-distance lorry driver and ended up in Hull and ended up having a trial match, and he told them, I've got a brother who can play a game as well. Now, that's very unconventional. Yours is slightly more conventional, isn't it? In that the scouts from England were watching you play.
Oh, they were watching me. They watched me up in Scotland, and I got invited to join. They had a nursery team up there, and I got invited to have a trial there, which I did, and I think I scored 3 or 4 goals from the left wing.
Yeah, this is the other intriguing thing, isn't it? That you weren't even a goalkeeper then.
I wasn't a goalkeeper then, and so the coach said I would invite you down to Highbury. Would you fancy it? And I hummed and hawed, and then my uncle said, no, go there. You'll be able to pursue your career there without any pressure here. So I took his advice and I came down, and that was it.
When did you stop being an outside left and start becoming a goalkeeper then? Did you have any goalkeeping history as a kid or anything like that?
I never played goal in my life before.
And yet you ended up as a pro goalkeeper with Arsenal.
Yeah.
So what changed?
Well, I was on the ground staff, and one of my jobs was to sweep the terraces with all the other lads. And I was walking past the training ground this particular morning. It was a Wednesday morning, and I could hear the boss, George Swindon, having a conversation with Ron Greenwood, who was coach and later became England manager.
Of course, yeah.
And there was raised voices, and as I was passing, he shouted, "Who's that?" And I said, "It's me, boss." He said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm just off to the West Stand, boss, to help, clean up." He said, "Well, don't bother about that." He said, "Go get changed, come back. I want you in here." So I thought, that's a bit different. Training with the first team, very nice.
And you were what, 16?
I was 17 by then. 17 by then. And so I came back, and I walked through the gate, and I said, "Where do you want me?" And he said, "Just go and goal." And I sort of said, "You're joking, aren't you?" He said, "I don't joke, just go and goal." And I said, "Oh, well, I've never played before." He said, "No, well, just do what you normally do."
Did it just need a goalkeeper?
That was it.
It didn't actually matter who was in goal. It was in order to get the game underway.
To get the game underway.
Right.
You see? He said, "Just go in there and do what you normally do, make a nuisance of yourself." And so I went in, and I was amazed how quickly I adapted. It just
came naturally.
Yeah, it just came to me. But lads were shooting at me, and I was catching them the proper way.
Yeah.
And I was catching most of them and not parrying too many, as you tend not to want to do as a goalkeeper. And I remember when we finished, I thought, well, I really enjoyed that. And as I was walking back, he said, "Come to my office." So I thought, oh, my God. And I went, and he said, "You told me a lie." I said, "I haven't, boss. I wouldn't tell you a lie." He said, "You have." He said, "You've played in goal before." I said, "I haven't, honestly. I swear I've never stood between the sticks." And he said, "Well, how do you do what you do?" He said, "You are a natural goalkeeper. You don't know it."
And it went from there.
And that's it. And he says, "You're not going to play in the left wing again at this club. You're going to be a goalkeeper or nothing. So what do you want to do?" I said, "I'll become a goalkeeper, boss."
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah.
You did enjoy it?
Yeah.
Even that first game when you were presumably very nervous and very confused?
Well,
And
I wasn't nervous because it was only a practice match. So it didn't really bother me.
But you were against first-team players,
Oh,
weren't you?
yeah. But it didn't...
completely without nerves?
Yeah, it didn't bother me.
You played a handful of games. You got in the Arsenal team. You played a handful of games, about 20-odd games, including a European tie.
I played in the first European tie that the club ever played in, yeah.
In the early 60s. But then you joined Southend.
I went to Southend. I'd got an injury. I'd nipped my cruciate ligament and the season before, and it cost me a season there at Arsenal. And I think they were a bit concerned that it probably that was, going to be a weakness for me. And I'd give me a bit of a fright, that. But
they had, they had Jim Furnell there as in goal for most of the decade, and Bob Wilson was coming through the ranks as well. So there was real competition for you at Arsenal. Yeah. So maybe the Southend move was the right one to make for career reasons as well.
It was indeed, yeah. And I did a couple of good years at Southend. Lost my place at the new year of the second season, and they'd signed a chap from Liverpool, and he took over from me. And then at the end of the season, they just gave me a free transfer.
Hull City won the third division title in 1966, conceded 62 goals in that season. Did it surprise you when Hull City's interest in that following summer was made clear that they were looking for a new goalkeeper? I mean, did you know anything about Maurice Swan or about the goalkeeping situation when Hull City got in touch?
No, I didn't. I knew of Maurice because I'd played for Southend. We'd played Hull City 3 times. And Maurice had played in goal. I think he played in all the games. But I wasn't aware of the situation.
Because he was in. It was only just before the start of the following season, wasn't it? It was Maurice Swan had picked up a pre-season injury.
Well, and that's I was led to believe afterwards. Well, I found out afterwards when Cliff Britton contacted me. He said that he had a goalkeeping problem because his goalkeeper had pulled a thigh muscle in training, and they had nobody to play and he didn't have a goalkeeper to play against Coventry in the opening match. Well, he contacted me on the Thursday evening. So it didn't give me long to get up the
Hull.
So
you had 48 hours before you made your debut and lost 1-0.
You lost 1-0.
Away from home at Coventry, yeah. But, I mean, the fact is that you got straight in the side within 48 hours of joining, despite the fact that they seem to have a perfectly good goalkeeper in Maurice Swan, who ended up only playing once that whole first season you were there. Yeah. So you obviously settled in immediately.
Oh, yeah. Didn't take much doing.
It was easy to settle in, was it?
Yeah.
It was a good club to join at that time.
They were a great club to join. A great set of lads. We'd never had a problem.
Did it feel like a club that was happy with that promotion it had just had, or did it want to go higher as quickly as possible?
I think, to be honest, that they were just looking to consolidate that first season when I got there.
Which they did. 12th.
Which they did quite easily.
Finished 12th. So.
But I always thought there was the ambition to get there. But I think maybe Cliff Britton, the manager, he wanted to be sure that when he got there,
it would stay there. Which is a dilemma that Phil Brown has got now.
Yeah.
Of course, in a way, isn't it? In that many people are saying that if Hull City get promoted, then brilliant, but the real task will come of staying where they are next season, if it happens. Like I say, you missed just one game. You had an injury the following year. Progress was a little bit slow, but many people look back at that late 60s period immediately after the promotion and wish that Cliff Britton had invested in the defence quicker than City eventually did. I mean, what did you feel about that, being the goalkeeper behind this back four? I mean, Davidson was still there, although he was about to retire. You had Butler, Milner, Jarvis, Banks, Wilson, Beardsley. All these guys were coming in.
Yeah.
Was it strong enough, whichever combination played?
I didn't find any great difficulty with it. They never let me down in any massive way, as being a goalkeeper. I felt quite comfortable with them all. They could have maybe boosted it in some way, but it didn't really cause me. Thinking back, at the time it didn't cause me any concern.
But when you conceded a goal, did you find yourself thinking that at any point that a stronger defence might have prevented the chance being created in the first place, or was it just down? Was it all sort of a collective responsibility?
Well, I think you always do. You always look at goals when they're scored against you, and you always try and analyse what went wrong.
Are you suggesting that goalkeepers are quick to blame other people? Or?
No, I don't blame anyone.
Except yourself, sometimes.
Except yourself.
Yeah.
No, you can. There are faults are made, and players in the outfield can make mistakes, and they can be covered up. But a goalkeeper can't make a mistake and cover it up.
I suppose another reason why people would look to the defence during that late 60s period was because it was pretty much flawless up front. With Chris Chilton and Ken Wagstaff, Ken Houghton, Ian Butler, Ray Henderson. I mean, those were the five initially, and then one or two others came in after Ray Henderson left. And because it was so good up front, then people automatically assumed that the reason Hull City aren't making the progress is because there's a problem at the back.
Yeah.
People would have made that assumption, wouldn't they?
They would have made that assumption, and I think it could have been tightened up, but I'm not going to slate any of my former colleagues or anything like that.
I suppose I'm not expecting you to at all. Did you get? I suppose you had the worst view in Boothbury Park or in any away ground when Chris Chilton and Ken Wagstaff were at their peak and at their best, because you were right at the other end of the park having to watch from that end. Did you still get a good eyeful of what they were about? And were they hard to face in training?
Hard to face in training? I hated training against the pair of them.
Go on.
Well, we used to have shooting practice, attack against defence, but the defence was non-existent, you see. It was just an imaginary, so you'd have somebody putting the ball up the wing to Butler and Butler chipping it into the middle and Wagstaff Houghton or Chilton running onto it. Well, you can imagine. And they just wanted to impale me in that gym wall, you know. It is week in, week out. And
every week?
Oh, damn.
What sort of view did you have on a match day, though, when they were in their prime and in full flight and terrorising the opposition, and you were at the other end twiddling your thumbs a little bit? I mean, were you allowed to sort of stand back and put your hands on your hips and just enjoy the sight?
No, yeah, I used to walk out to the edge of the box and have a watch, yeah. I like to play at the edge of the box because if a through ball came through, I could nip out and kick it out in the touch.
Do you think goalkeepers know strikers better than any other position on than they would know any other position on the park? Because a lot of the time, it's your job to try and outwit a striker into making a mistake.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever try and outwit a striker. I think what a goalkeeper has to do is, if you're faced with a situation where it's you and the striker, is never to take your eye off the ball. Because if you try to outwit him, he's trying to outwit you. And the only thing of importance to you is to stop that ball going in the net. You know, and I would keep my eye on the ball if I was approaching someone. I always kept my eye on the ball, and then when I thought it was time to make my move, I'd go. But I would never try to kid a guy into doing something, because I always thought
that's
they were
a very brave goalkeeper who does that to the best strikers, isn't it? Who tries to kid a striker into taking the shot too early or put it in the position where the goalkeeper wants it, so the goalkeeper can then con him and then dive down onto the ball. And it's a brave goalkeeper that will do that to a good striker.
Well, that's the way I did it. That's the only way I knew how to do it.
It always intrigues me when I watch footage from the 60s and 70s that goalkeepers back then never wore gloves unless it was really wet. They never ever wore gloves. And I know the gloves don't necessarily protect your hands a great amount, even the high-tech gloves that goalkeepers wear today. But it just amazing. Your hands must have been so painful at times and killing and cold as well.
Well, I got cold. I only let them get cold on one occasion. We were playing at Oxford, and they really did get cold. And
he's rubbing his hands now, as you can tell. He's thinking about it. Go on.
And I said to, I think with Frank Banks, I shouted to Banksy. I said, Banksy, get McKechnie round here. I said, my hands are freezing, you see. So McKechnie came round and he says, what's the matter? I said, my hands are freezing, Johnny. So I said, have you got something? So he put wintergreen on them.
Right.
See? And of course I rubbed it in and it was lovely, and then I got a lump of muck in my face and I wiped.
Oh no! And you wiped
my eye.
I bet that hurt.
Oh, it did.
Smarted.
And so I said to Banksy, get McKechnie back here.
This is John McKechnie, player turned physio.
He was physio
trainer, yeah.
Trainer. And he come on with a sponge of water and he soaked me in the head, and then my head was cold. So he said, just be brave, big man, will you, for goodness sake. Don't be a wimp.
Did it not? Why did goalkeepers not wear gloves? Was there a simple reason for it?
Well, the thing was, with gloves, we used to wear, at the Arsenal, used to give us string gloves, like riding, I think riding gloves, I'd call them. And they were quite good, actually, but they tended to fall apart much when they got really wet. And then Peter Benetti, he came out with some gloves, green gloves, but they were just like thin cotton.
Because if you watch the 1973, this is my sort of yardstick for it. If you watch the 1973 FA Cup final between Sunderland and Leeds, both goalkeepers, Jimmy Montgomery and David Harvey, are both wearing gloves. But that's simply because it's a very, very wet day and a slippery ball.
Yeah.
And the gloves were just normal woolly gloves that you would put on to go out and walk the dog. They weren't anything particularly sporting. They were just a pair of gloves that they could have just picked out the top drawer at home.
That's right. And they did no advantage.
Did they not help you grip on the ball or anything like that?
Not at all, not at all. I prefer just to take the things off and throw them in the back of the net and put some mud in my hands or something.
Fair enough. Ian McKechnie is with us, former Hull City goalkeeper, spent 7 seasons in between the posts at Boothbury Park between 1966 and 1974. On Wednesday, Super League again. The Super League fans panel will be here, looking back on the defeats for FC and KR at the weekend against Bradford and Harlequins respectively, and looking ahead to the games against Cass and Bradford as well. On Thursday, it's Chairman's Night, the return of Paul Duffin to co-host the programme. And on Friday, of course, no Sportscall because it'll be Super League Live, Castleford Tigers versus Hull FC. All the podcasts are now available from last week's editions of Sportscall, so the programmes featuring Justin Morgan, Mark Greaves, the Super League fans panel and Dick Tingle are all now available to download for free from www.kcfm.co.uk. And this programme with Ian McKechnie will be available online in due course as well. The thing that fans of the 60s and 70s of Hull City remember most about you, aside from your fine goalkeeping, were the oranges. Now, where did all this start? This penchant for oranges that ended up with fans throwing them at you on the pitch or throwing them towards you on the pitch. Where did it all begin? Can you remember?
It began one Thursday afternoon. Well, I think this is where it stemmed from. One Thursday afternoon, I'd gone back for some treatment on a thigh strain. And when I came out, I used to live off Belgrave Drive.
Very close to Boothbury Park, yeah.
In Westfield Road. And when I came out, I walked across and I thought, I'll walk down North Road and along Anlaby Road. And as I passed, there used to be a little wet fish shop who sold fruit and veg as well at the corner. And as I was passing, I saw this big Jaffa. And I thought, I'll just fancy that. So I went in and I bought it. And I said to the lady, is it all right if I peel it here, love? And I eat it as walking home? She said, yes, help myself. So I walked down North Road and onto Anlaby Road. And there was a couple of young lads walking the other way. And they shouted over, all the best in Saturday. And I said, thanks, lads. And I never thought no more about it. Well, it was an away match that particular week. And the following week, ran on to Boothbury Park, got to the North Stand, and 2 oranges came on. Now, I can only think it was those 2 lads that did it. But I actually put that in the paper. Who are these 2 lads? I appealed for these 2 lads.
Did you keep the oranges?
No.
What did you do with them?
The oranges, the 2 oranges are...
The 2 oranges that were thrown onto the pitch,
yeah.
What did you do with them? Can you remember?
Well, I took... bit the skin off them and then sucked them during the match.
Right.
Well, what else do you want me to do with it?
Well, I don't know. You could keep them and take them home with you afterwards, I suppose.
Well, yeah, but I could have done, but no, I prefer
the point is, you didn't just leave them there and you didn't ignore them, right?
No, I didn't ignore them. Keep your mouth moist.
Absolutely. Well, everyone the tradition was for a half-time orange, wasn't it, as well? And Harry's on the phone. I think he wants to talk about the very same subject. Would you mind just putting those headphones on in front of you, Ian? And Harry, I think, is on the line. Hello, Harry. Are you there?
I am there, yeah.
Hello, Harry. Ian McKechnie's listening. You want to talk about the oranges?
Well, yeah, that was the question, actually, because I used to go and watch him at Boothbury Park, and with Ken Out and John Hawley and everything, and we used to stand behind the goal. I was a lot younger then, and we used to throw the oranges, and I just wonder what my question was. What did he do with them all? But I think I've been answered that,
well,
really.
My question was, what did he do with those first 2? I mean, presumably the oranges kept coming every game after that.
Yeah, we used to take them and just throw them into the goal line, back of the goal, yeah.
So Ian, you ended up with a lot of oranges every week at home games.
Oh, it was an unbelievable amount of oranges. It was unbelievable. Yeah. Unfortunately, most of them were squashed by the time they got there, smashed in the ground. And I'd have been better treading them and making them orange squash. It used to take about half a dozen home. You know, we'd get some good ones and I'd take them home and eat them at home.
So, how did you discover it? Given that it didn't come from a newspaper article or anything like that, Harry, I mean, was it just seeing these first 2 oranges land on the pitch that sort of began it all, and you ended up all taking oranges to Boothbury Park?
We did. I mean, there was 3 or 4 of us used to go. We was all young then. We just asked. Well, we used to pinch them off a mum's table, actually, and take them.
Right.
Was about 10, 11 years old then, you see. So we just stick some oranges, stick them in our pocket, and take them to the ground, and just throw them behind the goal.
I tell you, your vitamin C, your nutritionist would have been very happy with the amount of vitamin C you would have been putting away that year.
I think you would have been.
I think we kept the odd one on the way home to eat, though.
Right. Yes, fair enough. Go on, Ian.
I just want to say one thing. I didn't realise that I was so unpopular with the crowd, because I've yet to find someone who threw an orange to me
You
almost threw them at me.
aiming for the back of your head.
Aiming for the back of my nut.
Right, fair enough. Harry, thanks very much for the call. Much appreciated.
Cheers, thank you.
Cheers for that.
Bye.
That's Harry Waddingham from Market Wheaton, who's given us a call. You can do likewise. 01482 333 998. Ian McKechnie. He wants to talk about goalkeeping as much as he would like to talk about oranges. So we'll. One question I do want to ask though, because somebody, a friend of mine called another Ian actually, who I see at games now and is on our fans panel. He also was watching back in the 60s and 70s. Is it true that some of the oranges had telephone numbers on them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever ring any of them, or is the family listening? Is it?
There was one in particular, and it got written on it. Ian McKechnie, I love you.
Yes,
and there was 3 kisses, and there was a telephone number.
It was signed by Eddie Blackburn, was it?
Yeah. And there was a telephone number on it. Now, we used to have a little reporter, and I forget his second name, Gilbert something or other.
Okay.
And I happened to be talking to him after the game, and I showed him it, you see. And unbeknown to me, he actually contacted the people, you see.
He made a mental note of the phone number.
He made a mental note of the phone number, you see.
Very crafty.
And he rang them, and he phoned me up on the Monday, and he said, I've got you an introduction to that person that threw you the orange, you see. And I thought,
oh no,
no, please, Gilbert, no. Anyway, he took me to this house in Boothbury Road in Hessel, and knocked at the door, and this very, very attractive woman opened the door, you see. And I said, I'm pleased to meet you. I said, thank you very much for the orange. She said, it's not from me, it's from my daughter, and she was 5.
Oh, bless. Fantastic. Were you married at the time?
I was indeed, yeah.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's move on from oranges. Were you, during your peak period, close to a Scotland call-up at any point, or do you think there was bias in the 60s and 70s against players who were based in England?
No, I actually found out quite a few years later that I had actually been picked for Scotland when I played for Arsenal. The unfortunate thing was that I had an altercation with the Arsenal manager of the time, Billy Wright, and he had sort of slandered me.
Oh dear!
He'd given me a bad report.
You can say that with respect to Billy Wright. He's no longer with us, so you can say what you want to say.
He put a bad report in about my character to the Scottish FA, and I only found out about, I think it was must have been 10 years later, when I was home, someone had mentioned that I'd actually been picked to play, in the squad to play against Wales.
Who was playing in goal for Scotland at the time? Because in the 60s, it was Frank Haffey was there, and he got destroyed by the 9-3 game, didn't he?
That was he played in the late 50s, did Frank. Bill Brown was a goalkeeper.
Who played for Tottenham.
Yeah, he was playing at that time. But I don't know whether he was injured or not, or I was just included in the squad.
Okay.
But I didn't find out till 10 years later.
We had another mid-table finish in 1970, but the goal-scoring charts were very good that season for City, to the extent that you contested the Watney Cup, which was inaugural that year. And I still quite like the idea of a Watney Cup competition now, although it never happened, which, for people who don't know, was a competition held between the 4 sides who finished top scorers in each of the 4 divisions. And here comes your moment, your real moment in football history, because City beat Peterborough, who would finish top scorers in the bottom division, and then drew with Manchester United in the first ever competitive penalty shootout.
That's right.
As a consequence. And within that penalty shootout, you became the first goalkeeper ever to save a penalty in a competitive penalty shootout. And the taker was Dennis Law. Your fellow Scotsman, no doubt a big hero. What do you remember of the whole occasion? Because there were 34,000 crammed into Boothbury Park for a pre-season fixture.
Yeah.
It was a big occasion, wasn't it?
It was a big occasion. It was a good game as well. It was we played very well that night, and I think we could have sneaked it actually. But the penalty kick situation got a bit farcical because it was the first time it was being used, and it wasn't in the same system as now. The system was that you'd select 5 players
for each side, yeah.
And if the result after those 5 players had taken them was level, then the next 5 would take them. There was no...
You mean you'd start again from 0?
Yeah, you would start again from 0 with the next 5.
Right.
And then, should it get to sillies, where it was still level, The two goalkeepers would then take.
So the goalkeepers didn't have an option of taking one earlier than the 11th?
No.
Right.
We were told it was the 11th.
And there was no sudden death?
There was no sudden death. It had to go right. It had to go the whole hog.
Well, it finished 4-3 to Manchester United on penalties, but you saved from Dennis Law. Do you remember the save? I mean, was it a save that was what you might call a good height for a goalkeeper, or was it a really spectacular save that you can dine out on?
It was good height. It was good height. It was down to my right and near the post. And it gets back to, keeping your eye on the ball. I determined that night just to watch where the ball was going, never mind where the player was trying to send me, and I went the right way. I went the right way for Denny Bestie's as well, but his beat me. And I saved Dennis's, which really upset me because he was a good friend. I knew him quite well.
Can't have upset you that much, surely.
Well, he's a fellow Scot.
Indeed, yeah. But you made a bit of football history there. I mean, your name is permanently in football's record books as a consequence of that one save, which will do your heart good, won't it?
Yeah, but I was also the first goalkeeper to miss one, wasn't I?
Wait, do you mean Manchester United took the first penalty in that shootout, and as a consequence... Oh, you mean you took a penalty?
I took the penalty that knocked us out. You see, and this was a bonus. It's caused me a bit of grief over the years.
You took what, the fifth penalty, mate?
I took the fifth penalty.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
You learn something every day.
You're the first goalkeeper to miss a penalty.
The first goalkeeper to save.
You weren't the first player to miss one, of course, because City had already missed one by that. I don't know who missed it, but City had already missed one by that stage.
That was Waggy.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
No wonder he didn't mention it when he was on this programme.
Of course he didn't. He said Stepney made Stepney save it.
Right, fair enough. Made a great goalkeeper like Alex Stepney save the ball.
But he didn't. He hit the corner flag with it.
Was it just a great occasion, or were you actually disappointed at the end of it?
Very disappointed. Very disappointed. I was disappointed that I was called upon to take the penalty because I was supposed to take the last one.
So, I mean, how confident was it? Let's have a look at who was the side that day. I've got them here. So we got McKechnie, Don Beardsley played, Roger De Vries, I bet he didn't take one. He scored 1 goal in 10 years for Hull City. Billy Wilkinson, bless him. Who else? Terry Neal. Chris Simpkin played. Number 7 was Malcolm Lord. Number 8 was Ken Houghton. Number 9, I assume, was Chillo. Yes, it was. Number 10 was Waggy. And number 11 was Ian Butler. And there was a sub on by then who was Stuart Pearson, who, of course, went on to play for Manchester United.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some good attacking footballers there, but 5 of them couldn't take a penalty before you, the goalkeeper.
They wouldn't.
They wouldn't or couldn't?
They copped out.
Right.
They honestly did. Because I remember, when it got to 4-3, I was stood talking to Alex Stepney. I knew Alec from when we were boys. He was at Arsenal. I was at Arsenal. He was at Millwall. And, I'd come across one another. And, of course, you get to the stage where you're in top-flight football. And I was talking away to him. And he just said to me, I think they want you at the halfway line, you see. And I turned round and John McKechnie was waving to me, come back, you see. And I thought, well, what's the matter? So I went back and I said, what is it, John? He says, you'll have to take a penalty. I says, John, I'm last. I've just saved one.
But it obviously wasn't set in the rules that the goalkeeper had to be last if it got that far.
No, but that's the way they said they would do it.
That's the way it was assumed, because goalkeepers were the last players who were ever going to take a penalty in a normal situation.
That's right.
But you ended up taking it 5th.
So I said, what's the matter? He says, nobody will take it. I said, but John, if I score, they'll still have to take a penalty because the first 5 can't go again.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, but it's a pressure point, isn't it, Keckers? I said, yeah, and thanks very much for the pressure, John.
Did you think that because you were the one who was least used to the outfield situation, even though you'd been an outfield player in your youth, that perhaps you might react to the penalty better? No,
the thing was, Ian Butler and I had been in a penalty kick competition in Birmingham the year before.
Right.
And we'd gotten beaten in the final, happily to say, by Glasgow Rangers. But we'd gotten to the final, and I think I'd only missed 2 in the whole night, you see. And, of course, McKechnie must have remembered this, and he said, I know who'll take it.
Yeah.
You see? And, of course...
A long memory just when you didn't really want him to have one, yeah.
And, of course, I wasn't prepared. You're not geared up for it, you know. You sort of concentrating on the game and saving the penalties as many as you can.
What was the general attitude to the idea of a penalty shootout? Because, like I said, this was the very first one. I mean, can you remember when the authorities had come up with the idea, and what was the general attitude to penalty shootouts when they first emerged?
I think there was a bit scepticism, but it was quite quickly, acknowledged. It was quite quickly acknowledged that it was as good a way as any to finish a match.
And from your point of view, you would say that, because as a goalkeeper, unless you find yourself in a situation where you're being told to take one, you can't really lose as a goalkeeper.
You can't lose.
In a penalty shootout, can you?
No, that's what I was saying to Alex Dempsey. We were talking before we started the penalties. He said, "How do you feel about it?" I said, "Well, how would you feel about it? We don't have a problem. We can't lose. If we save, we're heroes. But if we let them all in, they just expect them to go in anyway. You see,
It's with respect to goalkeepers, it's very rarely a brilliant piece of goalkeeping that wins a penalty shootout, isn't it? It's often a bad penalty in the first place that allows the goalkeeper to get there.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Right.
Is that fair?
That's fair. That's fair. If the goalkeeper stands properly and goes the right way, he's got a chance of saving it.
This was the time also when Cliff Britton had just stepped sideways and Terry Neal had arrived. Now, you knew Terry Neal from your Arsenal days, didn't you? What was your relationship like back in those days at Arsenal?
Not very good. Not very good.
Did it improve?
No, not really. We had a good regard for one another's capabilities, and abilities on the field. But we crossed swords a few times.
Okay, and we'll come to that, because we've got one section of the programme left which we'll come to in 2 or 3 minutes' time, and that's where we talk about the Terry Neal era at Hull City, as seen through the eyes of Hull City's number one back then, Ian McKechnie, who is with us through until 8 o'clock this evening. If you'd like to put a question to him, it's 01482 333 on the phone. You can text KCFM, followed by your question for Ian McKechnie and your name, to 87103. Text messages are 25 pence plus what you normally pay, and the email address is sportscall@kcfm.co.uk. Super League fans panel will be here on Wednesday, looking back on the defeats for FC and KR at the weekend, and ahead to this weekend's games. FC, of course, are at Castleford on Friday night, and Rovers host Bradford Bulls on Sunday afternoon. On Thursday, it's Chairman's Night. Paul Duffin returns to co-host the programme. We'll let you know as we get closer to the day who the guest is going to be. We're still waiting for confirmation on that. And on Friday, it is Super League Live, of course, the Cass Hull FC game. All of last week's editions of Sports Call are now podcasted, and you can download them for nothing from the KCFM website. Justin Morgan, who was here last Monday, the Hull KR coach, Mark Greaves, former Hull City defender, Super League panel, and also Dick Tingle's appearance last Thursday. All of them now available to download from www.kcfm.co.uk. Ian McKechnie, former Hull City custodian of the leather, is with us until 8 o'clock. So we get to that summer of 1970, the Watney Cup and everything else, and Terry Neal had arrived. Cliff Britton had gone upstairs, to use the modern phrase.
Yeah.
He arrived, E-type jag, and made pretty much an immediate impact. I mean, you said that you and he didn't see eye to eye, but purely putting on the spectacles of somebody who was assessing a manager, what did you think of him as a manager when he came in and had that first season at Bilfrey Park?
Well, he sort of swept the place clean. The old regime with Cliff went straight out the window. It was a more modern approach, a younger approach, if you like. And I think that I have to give him credit for that, was most beneficial to the club.
You'd had 2 ever-present seasons leading up to that point. You'd not missed a game. And under Terry Neal, he kept, you were there again. You were there for the full season, except the very last game of that 1971 season. And what an eventful season it became.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the league campaign first. Does that campaign, finishing 5th in the table, remain a case of what should have been?
It does. It does. We won the match at Sheffield.
The Battle of Bramall Lane?
The Battle of Bramall Lane. 40,000, some many hundreds there. We won it. It was a very hectic night, that.
40,227. Yeah. Sheffield United 1, Hull City 2. Goal scorers Chris Simpkin and Ken Wagstaff.
That's right. We thought... We were quite confident from then on we could go forward and get promotion. And then the next game was at home to Oxford, and I think they scored in the first minute and never come over the halfway line again.
And you lost 1-0, yeah.
We lost 1-0. And it seemed to drain us somehow, but we didn't have a bad run in after that, actually. We lost probably more than we should have done.
Yeah, that was the problem, wasn't it?
We drew quite a lot more than we should have done.
When you did win a game, you didn't follow it up with another.
That's right.
And that was often the problem in that last sort of couple of months
if you see
of the season.
Yeah.
And you had a great cup run, of course, in 71. Did that ruin the promotion bid, ultimately, do you think?
I don't think, because I think success breeds success, and I think a good cup run keeps you going. I don't go along with this putting second
teams
out for cup matches.
What about just recovering from game to game, though? I mean, you were fortunate in that the cup run, no replays were involved, and you were drawn at home every time as well. But ultimately, it was an extra 4 games than if you'd gone out in the third round that you wouldn't have had, and maybe you might have been slightly fresher for the league campaign.
Maybe we would have.
Because ultimately, is a cup run, particularly back then, only any good to you if you end up going to Wembley?
Oh yes. But I don't know that. I don't go with that. I just think when you're playing and you're on a winning run, you should just keep playing, irrespective of what the games are.
Stoke City in the quarter-finals is a game that everybody of that generation will never forget, and certainly everybody who played in it, yourself included. Waggy's remembered that day for his 2 goals. Roger De Vries is remembered for the throw-in incident that led to Stoke's winner. And now when Malcolm Lord came on this programme, and it was a long time ago, he came on back in September, he talked about going in at half-time 2-1 up, and you being asked by the coaching staff or by the trainer or somebody, why didn't you commit a professional foul for their first goal? Do you recall this? Terry Conroy went round you, didn't he? And put the ball into an empty net. You could have brought him down, or you could have handled it outside the box.
I could have done, but I thought Frank Banks was actually going to make it back behind me. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to pull him down. I might get sent off, but you didn't in those days.
Well, that's why you had the option, wasn't it? Because you did have had your name taken and nothing else.
Yeah, and I'd been sent off before at Luton for bringing down Malcolm McDonald, but that's by the by.
Right.
But he actually got there. I didn't have the time to close him down, and by the time I'd made up my mind to do it, he was gone. He was gone. You know, and I don't think there was much more I could have done.
But do you remember being asked at half-time, why didn't you do it? This is the story that Mally Lord told.
Why didn't I do it?
Yeah, no, do you remember being asked about it at half-time when you got into the dressing room?
I don't remember being asked about it, but I think my answer would have been, well, he just was too good for me.
He was too quick, got round you and found an empty net before any of the defenders could get back and cover for you as you went out to him. Fair enough, but it was still 2-1 at half-time, and although they'd got a little bit of momentum as a consequence of scoring a late goal, because, of course, the thing that's remembered is not just that Stoke won 3-2, but City were 2-0 up in the game. But there was still a second half ahead that you were leading in and should have been able to hold on.
That's right.
Do you think, in a way, at 2-0 up, was there more pressure on you as a goalkeeper? Because the attackers had done their job, they'd scored 2 goals, so was the pressure more on you to make sure that job, that their good work wasn't in vain, if you like? Did you feel more pressure as a consequence of being 2-0 up? No, I never feel pressure. You don't become aware of, we're 2-0 up, I've got to be something else. You just play your game. But it's with it being a team game, it's the attackers' jobs to score goals, and it's your job to keep them out.
That's
They've done their bit. That's the point I'm making, you see. But I don't feel under any pressure to do that. That's my job. That's the way I look at it. Could you have done anything with the other 2 goals? I mean, the second one, you came out to punch a free kick and didn't get a great deal of distance on the ball, and they put it back into the box and scored. Well, I suppose in retrospect, what happened there was, when I think back on it, I should have gone 2-fisted with it. I only went 1. Right. And then I don't know why I did, because I was coming up behind the whoever it was. Was it Ritchie or something? Yeah. Big John. John Ritchie. Yeah. And I was coming up behind him, and for some reason I just took 1 punch, 1 hand to it, whereas I think if I'd have gone with 2... You'd got more distance. I'd have got more distance. I would have gone. And I think I was probably at fault for that. Okay. So 1 out of the 3 is something that when you look back on and think, I probably could have done better. I probably could have done better. Fair enough. Or should have done better, shall we say. Jeff Whelan's arrived the following season. Were you always expecting more competition for your shirt than you'd actually had up to that point? Because since you'd taken over from Maurice Swan, you'd had a fairly clear run for 3 or 4 years, hadn't you? Yeah, and I was very lucky, and I didn't have a lot of injuries. I didn't suffer a lot of injuries, I would have expected. I think in actual fact it'd been better for me if I'd had somebody, at my back. Who was there? You had Walters, didn't you? Well, there was Paddy Walters, and then there was Eddie Blackburn, who was there for a long time. He waited a long time, didn't he? He waited a long time, Eddie. He was a useful goalkeeper. But I think when the big fella came, I could see in him instantly that he had all the attributes to be a good goalkeeper as Jeff. He was a big lad and he had good agility. And the 2 of you split. In fact, you split it, as it turned out, exactly equally. 21 appearances each the following year. Yeah. But then you went in the reserves. Did you feel hard done by it? Did you and Terry Neal fall out over this? Over Jeff Whelan's being elevated to the position of top goalkeeper? No, I didn't. I wasn't. The lad had got there on merit. So I accepted that.
You know, it wasn't as if he was there on a promise or something like that.
Did your relationship with Terry Neal decline at this point, though?
No.
You said earlier that you didn't get on that well to begin with.
So it couldn't get any worse.
It couldn't get any worse. It was mutual contempt, was
that's it? Exactly. In a nutshell. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Mutual contempt. I love that. You played just one game in the 73-74 season, which turned out to be your swan song. It was a defeat at home to Swindon. Were you aware that your time was going to be up that summer? And
I knew. He told me that.
This is Terry Neal.
He said, "I'll give you a free transfer at the end of the season." He said, "You can go and make yourself a few bob somewhere else."
But of course, he left almost immediately after you did.
Well, he left the beginning of the next season. He went into the next season. 2 games
or something like that.
2 games, yeah. Yeah.
But you'd gone in the summer. Did you try and protest or ask for another year or anything like that, or did you accept the situation?
No,
and start
I accepted
looking?
The situation because I knew that I wouldn't be get a run again if Jeff kept on the way he was playing, and I just accepted it. Yeah.
You played for Goole, for York, Scarborough. Now that suggested that you were settled in the area and didn't fancy moving house. Even if a league club though from away out of the area, from elsewhere in the country, actually come in for you, and did you just decide for family reasons or for geographical reasons not to go?
The problem was when I'd played my last game against Swindon, Terry Neal, he called me in the office and he said, "Do you want to go to America?" You see, and I said, "Well, yeah, I'd be quite interested." He said, "Well, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Boston? Do you want to go to New York?" So I said, "Well, I think I'd like to go to Boston." So he said, "Okay, I'll put somebody in contact with you." And I went to Boston. I had a season playing over there.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing from my point of view was we qualified for the playoffs. I'd gone out there quite confident that we wouldn't reach the playoffs because it was a new franchise.
This is the NASL, as it was, then, the North American Soccer League playoffs. Yeah.
And I'd gone out there and I'd assumed that it would just be a sort of an easy time because it was a new club. The players from all over the place. There were Brazilians.
A country that wasn't used to the sport at all.
There was Brazilians, there was Peruvians, there was Poles,
Germans,
there was Germans, there was everything, and there was Paddy Greenwood and I, and I didn't think we would get anywhere near the playoffs. And I'd been told from home that Mansfield had been interested in signing me, and also Scunthorpe. And I thought, oh well, that'll do me fine. They're not far away. You
certainly could have commuted to Scunthorpe even without the Humber Bridge back then.
Oh yeah, you just go round
the Hughes Bridge like we all used to do back then.
But of course we went into the playoffs and we got right to the final down in Miami, which we lost incidentally. But by that time, the season had almost started. There's 92 clubs in the league. That's not a lot of goalkeepers, And so, I just had to accept the fact that when I came back, I would have to do,
start again. Start looking for a club.
Yeah.
And you went, like I said, you played for Goole.
Yeah,
and for York. You played in the league for York, so your league career.
I didn't play for York.
Did you not? No, I've got the York down on my little list here. So obviously there's an error in research. But you played for Goole, certainly.
I played for Goole and Scarborough.
Right? Okay. Since you've had very good goalkeeper since, back to what I said at the beginning, which is that somehow, no matter how poor the situation the club has been in, and it's had some great highs and some real troughs in the last 40 years or so, but they've always had good goalkeepers, and Whelans, Norman, Fettis, Carroll, and now Bose Myhill. The tradition's always kept going, even when the club declined, didn't it? Often it was a goalkeeper that saved the day.
Yeah.
And you go to the games now, because you're on the hospitality staff there with ex-players like John Hawley and Pete Skipper and Linton Brown. What do you think of Bose Myhill?
Bose has got all the attributes of being a good goalkeeper. I've just got one problem with him. I'm not going to say on the air.
Oh, right, okay.
Well, I can do. There's nothing malicious in it. It's not a great fault. I think I'd like to see him more decided about long through balls.
Right.
He just doesn't seem to...
Whether to come out for them or not.
Yeah, he's got to make his mind up one way or the other. He's
got halfway.
He's got to take the onus or put the onus.
Right.
And he sometimes gets midway, and it's neither one thing or the other.
You watched his predecessors, your successors. I mean, the benchmark that people always use for goalkeepers is Tony Norman. Do you think that's fair? Do you think he's the best that you've seen in a City shirt, in a City green shirt?
I didn't see a lot of him, but he was a very good goalkeeper. He was a very good goalkeeper. He commanded his area excellently.
Given that goalkeepers are protected a lot more now, we'll make this the last question because we haven't got long left. Would you have actually liked to have played in today's game, or is it actually beneficial to goalkeepers?
I enjoyed playing when I couldn't have played now.